Welcome to the Inspirational Leaders Series, a collection of short interviews with sharp, impactful people that I know because the business world needs more refreshing people like them. And my name is Teresa Brazen. I am a leadership and executive coach that helps design leaders and leadership teams elevate their impact and the stature of design in their organizations. And today I am excited to have a conversation with Tanarra Schneider, who is VP, Head of Inclusive Practices at Activision Blizzard. And she has a wide range of experience in user experience strategy, service design, organizational transformation, development, and learning design. And she's using those skills to change the experience of work, making it more human-centered, inclusive, and creative. So I'm really excited about this conversation today. Thank you for joining me, Tanarra.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah. So I want to start with just learning a little bit about the experiences that have shaped you as a leader. And so I'm wondering if you could think of a particular time or experience that has really instructed and shaped the way that you lead today, and give us a little clue into how you think about leadership.
Yeah, it's fun when you get to look back over a 25-year career and try to think about those moments that have helped shape you as a leader. But one in particular that as I was reflecting for our conversation, that really stands out is actually having to fire or lay people off has really changed the way that I lead. And unfortunately, because of the last, I'll just say, decade of my career, joining a big consulting company, spending time in a market that shifted multiple times, especially because of the pandemic, but also because of the changing nature of work. I have had to lay people off 5 or 6 times in the last decade. And it really changed the way I led day to day, because what I realized was that a lot of people lose their jobs or are shifted in organizations because of things that they don't understand, that are surprises to them. And I think that's fundamentally unfair. If we can give people feedback and we can coach along the way and really truly be observant leaders, but also be humble and vulnerable and empathetic when we give that feedback, especially when it's challenging and it's really necessary, it shifts how people have that moment, even if that moment is necessary, even if you can't control it. There is a difference in how people perceive it, a difference in how they understand their value, and then a difference in what they contribute either to your organization or to the next organization they join. So that, and it was unexpected, right? It wasn't on my development path. I wasn't trying to grow that skill, but those moments of having to let people go from an organization, however it comes about, were really formative for me.
And I loved your use of the word observant leadership. Tell me more about that.
I think it can be really difficult to stay close to work and to individuals, especially as your responsibility grows in an organization. So I came into my last job at Accenture as, a team leader more so than anything else. I had a fairly small team. It was manageable, but over a fairly short period of time, my responsibilities grew. And it occurred to me that as somebody who was leading a design organization, I had to be observant about 2 things. One, the individuals and how they interacted. So I had to stay close to the work as much as I could. And then actually the work itself. What were we really creating? Because it's really easy to sit back and be like, oh, I'll just get a status update. Well, I wasn't in that meeting, so I don't know how those people interact. You have to be observant. And every opportunity you can take matters. So even if it's just in a staff meeting or it's in a moment of watching 2 people interact in a more casual setting in the office environment, you can really begin to understand how folks come at their work, how they approach colleague relationships, how they are in a space. And especially now when we're distant from folks and there's so much more virtual environment in the workplace, you really have to be observant. Who's participating, who's stopping and asking, who's listening, who's in a conversation just to talk versus to really hear. You can pick up on these things if you can sit back and observe as a leader and not always be at the forefront of the conversation.
Yeah, and that last bit I think is an important thing. I definitely had to learn in my leadership journey of becoming the last person to speak. So one, you make it safe for people to share their ideas, and they don't sort of index towards you, but also so you can really hear.
Mm-hmm.
A thing that's really interesting as you're talking that comes up for me is it sounds like you're actually doing something that I do as a coach, which is noticing and sharing what you're noticing, and sharing what you notice about people in a context that they may or may not be aware of, as well as, what's happening in the environment so they know how to navigate it better. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I could 100% see how that would be an instructive journey, and comes with the job. And I'm also interested in, thinking about the things, the sort of pillars of or building blocks of your leadership approach. One of the things I do with a lot of my clients is help them to become aware of their personal values and start using those to drive how they lead and how they shape their career and their life, et cetera. So I'm really interested in if there are any values that come up for you that have shaped the way that you think about leadership or the way that you lead.
Yeah. I think almost tracking back to the piece we were just talking about, a big one for me is agency or empowerment. And I think we think of empowerment a lot of times, I see it misused in some of the work that I do. And we say, empower others or, really empowered team members. And I think a lot of people think that is, well, I gave you the thing, go do it. That's not what it's meant for me. So this works in my personal life as well as in my professional life when I think about my 10-year-old daughter and when I think about my team and how I create the environment where they can do two things. Know that I trust them so that even if it goes wrong, even if it goes sideways, that they are trusted to make good decisions, to go out and do their absolute best, and to come back and share what they learned and to ask for help, right? So for me, that's like empowerment isn't just, I know you've got the skills, go do it. And, it is, I trust you. I know you have the skills, and the things you don't know, it is okay to say you don't know them. It is also okay to learn along the way. And so for me, empowerment's a huge piece of that puzzle because I can't and don't want to, I have no desire to babysit anybody all day long. I don't do it with my 10-year-old. I'm not going to do it with my team. I trust her to have really great judgment. I trust them to have really great judgment and to use all of the skills and the things I know they know how to do, including learn, to go out and get something done. And so that's two pillars, really. It's empowerment and it's trust, right? Those two things are huge for me as a leader.
Yeah, and environment. You use the word environment too, that it's not just about empowering the individual, but making sure the conditions are set that they can succeed, it's possible, as opposed to setting them up for failure. Interesting. Okay, I love the word agency too. It just has a lot of gravitas.
Because I think sometimes as leaders, we forget that I'm not responsible for your entire career. I'm not responsible for every minute of your day. That requires you as an individual to have agency. So I'm here to support and to grow you and to make sure you know that I'm in your corner. I'm here for you. I am your corner man, right? I'm not always the one in the ring. I can be the corner man and do that really well, but that requires that you be willing to go out and fight for yourself, for the thing that you're doing, to have that agency, to do the work, to put the effort in, and to also know that sometimes it's not going to go the way you want it to, and that's okay.
Well, then, and so another piece of that equation, then it sounds like for you is ownership.
Absolutely. Ownership and accountability.
Yeah. Yep. Well, okay, so let's build on this, thinking about environment. You told me you're out to make work environments healthier, more human-centered, and inclusive, which can sound a little bit like word salad unless you know what it means. So I'm interested in what that means for you and why it matters.
Yeah. This is a particularly interesting journey for me because I think I've been on it my entire career. The role I have now really is the culmination of so many things that I've done and tried to do. And so I think starting with inclusivity. And what does that really mean in an organization? And I don't want anybody to mistake that for global inclusivity. And yes, we should all be, curious about the world and want to embrace everybody, and our beliefs should reflect that. At work, in organizations, inclusivity means that we're all here for a reason. We bring the skills that we have within us to do the work that needs to be done. And we are here because of that, not in spite of that, right? So it's the ability to contribute to this place every single day because of who I am and to be valued for that without the expectation of conformity. So for me, that last piece is really important. I'm not expecting anybody to conform. When I talk about inclusive organizations, it means we're all here to do something together. We got some outcomes to meet. So let's respect one another. Let's value one another for the skills that we bring, even when we disagree. And even if you and I don't believe the same things, that's okay. But that creative tension that can be there then, if we know that I come at this from a different place than you do, so let me be curious and learn. That only happens when we know we're all valued and we're all in a space where we're expected to and allowed to contribute to the best of our ability without the expectation of conformity. So when you put those things together, and we all know we can be in a safe space to contribute, to do our jobs to the best of our ability, I think that creates healthier organizations writ large, but it starts with leadership that knows how to lead and how to demonstrate trust and how to empower and how to create agency, but also how to hold tension around respect and a respectful work environment where we get to express our views, but we don't get to behave in such a way that because we disagree, I disrespect you. So for me, it's about designing a system that supports all of us to be there to do a job without expecting us to not be the person we were when we walk through the door or the person we're going to be when we leave at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, the work you versus the home you. I definitely do a lot of work with people around trying to integrate the two so they can show up more authentically and therefore be more powerful at work. And I'm wondering,
there's a falsehood in that. Just like one thing I worry about with this whole be authentically you and bring your whole self to work. Stop. Please don't bring your whole self to work. It's okay. It's actually okay. And it's not because I don't want to know all of you. It's that I don't want people to feel like I've got to fully expose every part of who I am to be in this place and be healthy and do a really great job. So I think we've put a lot of pressure on the word authenticity as opposed to just saying you can show up and do your job really well and be a decent human being and create wonderful outcomes with people and disagree respectfully and let that be okay.
Yeah, you're talking, especially with the way you're thinking about the word respect is there's still what's decorum. There are still boundaries. But I think the thing that's underpinning that is, it sounds like there's a lot in what you're talking about that's around a feeling of psychological safety. You can voice something and it can be disagreed with. As you said earlier, you can share, I don't know something or I'm learning something with your manager or leader and not have that be necessarily a ding. Yeah.
And you can be curious about other people, right? If you and I come at a subject from fundamentally different lived experiences, it is okay to be curious about somebody or say, hey, tell me more about that. Or tell me why you see it that way, because that's not how I see it. There are ways to approach those spaces right now where everything feels so polarized and so political, especially in the work environment. It is actually okay to be curious about people. It's also okay for people to say, I don't want to go too deep into that, but here's a couple of things to think about, right? So it's about giving people the mechanisms to navigate relationships that can feel really challenging. But also when we talk about creative spaces, that creative tension is critical to what we do. The ability to give critique is critical to what we do. And if we can't hold that and hold respect at the same time, we end up with the sea of same and everything becomes very boring and people are just kind of placating one another, right? Which is why I add creativity into that vision, because I do think, especially in today's day and age, creativity is a huge part of our work environment. It needs to be, but it won't be there if we can't find that psychological safety and that basis of respect.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan of creativity. I mean, this is the Inspirational Leaders Series, so I think a lot about this, and I'm curious about. So you talked about psychological safety as a piece of cultivating creativity, and that I love that phrase, sea of same. Nobody wants the sea of same. What else do you think is important, or what have you learned along your leadership journey about how to really cultivate creativity in teams?
I think one of the biggest lessons I learned early on was like it's expectation setting. And when I say that, what I mean is I think creativity thrives in different spaces. It's not always when we're jammed in a room together trying to brainstorm. That starts to lead to sea of same.
Mhm.
You have to create space for people to kind of stew in things, in ideas, live with things. There are some of us who like ideas just come like this, right? And then we're going to have coworkers who are really analytical, who really need to spend time. So this isn't just about people who do creative work. This is about the
Mhm.
thought process of how do I understand something? How do I unpack something? So when we set expectations up front around a couple of things, one, how do I work? How do you work? Hey, Teresa, how do you work?
Mhm.
Like, what do you need to feel really like
Mhm.
confident in your decisions? Or do you need time to digest? Are you somebody who really likes to get into a room and riff together and then go away? Understanding how people work is a fantastic tool for creating empathy and understanding and space and patience, right? Because a lot of us will assume that everybody works the way we do. So if you don't set
Mhm.
expectations early, then it's really
Mhm.
hard to have that psychological safety to know, oh, they're not shutting me out or they're not ignoring me. They
Mhm.
have a process they're working through, and I understand that.
But
Yeah,
are you sort of getting at uncovering for everyone who's going to work on something like how people process and think?
it's that, and it's then also looking at that, and especially from a leadership perspective, understanding how the people on your team work, and then what's the expectation of the outcome, right? So if we've got a project we're working on together and we've got a 2-week deadline,
Mhm.
then we know, and we know we've got a couple key players who really need some time to digest, then you need to get them the information up front so they have time to digest, so your deadline's not impacted, so you don't have teams that are killing themselves to get something done. It
Mhm.
is understanding how people process, how they think, what's the work in front of us, and what are the things we know so we can set a healthy set of expectations as a team, as a partnership, whatever that might be, so that we're not second guessing. And then we're also not impacting some portion of the team because we haven't considered how they work at all or what they might need at a certain place. And it sounds like project planning, and to some extent it is, but really it's empathy. It's
Mhm.
understanding your team enough to have empathy for how folks work, and then setting ground rules that we can all live by and setting those
Mhm.
expectations early so that you're not assuming. We do a lot of assuming in the workplace, right? And if we can stop that and we can start vocalizing and agreeing, right? In coaching, sometimes we talk about
Mhm.
this as a designed alliance. How are we going to
Mhm.
work together? What's our alliance? What are the things that we need to do when something's not going well? What do we do when it's going really well? How do we
Mhm.
celebrate? Right? Those pieces of the puzzle sometimes, even informally, create a lot of bandwidth for the work
Mhm.
that needs to be done and the way that it gets done.
Mhm. Yeah, so there's understanding, expectation setting, empathy,
Mhm.
are some of the themes I heard in there. I have this random question that's popping into my head, and I'm so
Yeah.
curious. So you said like 25 years, had a career that's gone many different places, and I am curious what the Tanarra of today would tell the Tanarra of 10, 15 years ago, earlier in the journey of figuring out who you are as a leader. What would you tell yourself?
Oh, wow. She needed a lot of help.
We all did. Everyone was bumbling around.
Actually, I think I would probably have just told her, "You didn't get here by mistake." I was put in
Mm,
leadership roles really early in my career, and I just always assumed that it was a fluke. And
mm,
I know we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. I'm not even sure it was that. I just sort of always felt like somebody made a mistake. Like, well, they'll
mm,
figure out one day that this was just not the right thing to do or that they made a mistake. And the truth
mhm,
is, I have been leading things since I was a kid.
mm,
I was a sort of de facto on stage leader in my dance company. I was always that person that my choreographer looked to and said, okay, if you're having a bad day, they're all going to have a bad day. So you better pull it together. And it's like, I don't want that pressure. I'm
mhm.
16. She didn't care. And
Mm,
so when you have the ability, and it wasn't because I was like this big boisterous person, I was actually really nervous and very shy and super vulnerable and really empathetic. And I cared what other people felt. Oh, what do you know? And so I think I would just tell her, you didn't get here by mistake. Just own it. It's okay.
I love that. And is there anything in particular that you think helped you to shift to owning that?
It kept happening over and over and over
Mm.
again.
Yeah. And
I
at
mean,
some point you're like, I don't think people are making mistakes as often.
yeah. I mean, at the point that I was doing
Yeah.
some of the work that I was doing, even in my, like 3 or 4 years into my career, it started to become a pattern. And I mean, it probably wasn't until I left the corporate world, did something else and came back into it, and the same thing started happening again. I was like, "Oh, this is happening on purpose." But it's not
Mhm.
something that's happening to you. You're doing this. You're stepping into these spaces. You're volunteering yourself. You're putting yourself into this space of taking on responsibility, not just for yourself, but for other people. And
Yeah.
so it just kept happening. And so eventually I realized that's actually the thing I'm really good at. Like there are better
Mm.
designers out there than I am. There are better strategists out there than I am. Certainly. I'm really good at pulling all these things together and helping other people be their best. And I pride
Mm.
myself on that.
Which is why I'm so glad that we got connected and I could include you in this community of people that are all very intentional about their leadership. So thank you
Same.
for sharing your story and the ways that you think about leadership. And I think you gave us all a lot to chew on. So I
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Thanks. It's been fun
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the rest of you who are listening in, if you are interested in hearing more interviews like this one with Tanarra, you can find them on my website, teresabrazen.com. And thanks for joining us. Thank you, Tanarra.
Thank you.